So on Friday night, I mentioned that there is a lav, which is an interesting lav at the end of the parsha, which is called Loisasun iti Eloi Chesed Eloi Zhor. Normally that lav is very simple. Don't make gods next to Hashem. So don't put Slomim Eloi Chesed Eloi Zhor iti with me. But Chazal learned that no, it is oisi, that Loisasun oisi. Don't make a picture of me. So how do you make a picture of me? Hashem does not have a picture. So Chazal say a human being. Don't make a stand built from a human being. You're not allowed to make a, how do you say stand built? A statue of a human being. Because a human being has the picture of God, has the Tzelem and the Dmus of Elohim. And this is clearly that the Rambam, I'm sure when he wrote that Lo Yisaseh, was struggling. Because for the Rambam, there is no Tzelem and there is no Dmus of Hashem. And that what we are is only kind of a way of speaking. It's only our intellectual part that is similar to Hashem, but definitely not that our guf, that our face and our structure of the guf has anything to do with Hashem. And still, because Chazal say that Losasun Oisi, how do you make a picture of Hashem by making a picture of a human being? It's clear that Chazal had a different view of the Rambam, or at least a less extreme view like the Rambam, and kind of that the guf of the human being is quite similar to whatever is what Hashem. And that is something which the Rambam, I'm sure, had a lot of struggle with. And because for him, this concept is one of the ikrim that he added on in the Ikri Amunah, that God does not have any tzelem and any dmus, that it is only a way of speaking. But still, in halachically, if somebody makes a statue of a human being, he's chayv malchus. Why? Because he made because he was over on the Lesasun Oisi. He made a picture of Hashem. So basically, it is possible, according to Chazal, to picture Hashem. How do you picture Hashem? By making a statue of a human being.
If you do it anymore to represent Hashem, that's okay.
No, you're not allowed to. Even a noi, you're not allowed to. It's nothing. You're not allowed to. Definitely not. There is as noisy that you're not allowed to make a picture of Hashem. But even if you want to make it because to remember a person that you make a statue, it's a loisas, fill in a noi. It is a problem. He struggles with that, and because this whole, we shall see. This whole shir is a little bit on the struggle that the Rambam has between his convictions and then what we see in the Tanakh and we see in the Chazal. And that's where he is stuck, but he's very stubborn, and he says that his view is right, and if there is a problem with Chazal or we have a problem with the Posuk, then we have to understand the Posuk differently, and Chazal we have to understand differently. But he has a very clear view, which he goes and he does not change. And we'll see how the Cuzari tries to find a bit of a balanced approach. This viewpoint that Hashem has a tzura, I explained, is used by the Ramak in his Toimet Devorer. The Ramak in Toimet Devorer says that the reason why I have to do chesed is not because there is a mitzvah from V'olachto b'trochov, that the person has to go in the ways of Hashem. It doesn't mention V'olachto b'trochov at all. The only reason he says that a person has to do chesed is because tzura noah u'masim mechuorim. So that I have a nice tzura. The tzura is from Hashem. I represent Hashem, but my deeds are horrible deeds. I steal, I am not honest, and I do horrible things. This is something which makes a busha to Hashem, because people see God and see God behaving in a not nice way. So this is the whole idea of the Ramak. So in the Kabbalah, they take this further, and they also use the concept that we have a shape of God in order to explain why a person has to behave good. And this is the viewpoint of the Ramak, because the Ramak does not mention at all the V'olachto b'trochov. He only mentions that logic, a svora, which is tzura noah. We have the shape of God, u'masim mechuorim, but our maisim are not nice. Versus Hashem, where the maisim are nice, and it's the busha for Hashem. It's simply, that's how he defines the reason why. It's also very extreme. We also said, and I already mentioned it, and more in the name of Emmanuel Levinas. This I didn't mention on Friday night, but I mentioned the concept that it is not only that I have a Tzelem Elokim, and therefore I have to do chesed with the other, but also because the other has a Tzelem Elokim. And it means, in other words, when I see another, I see God in front of me, and therefore I have to do whatever I can to help the other person. Because by helping the other person, it is as if I help Hashem. And this is what the Tikkun Zohar says, Eizu Chosid, HaMeschased im Koinoi. Who is the Chosid? The one that helps Hashem. And this, how do you help Hashem? By doing chesed with a human being. You are helping the Tzelem Elokim. By the way, when the Torah says that a person is not allowed to kill, so the Torah says, why are you not allowed to kill? Ki b'Tzelem Elokim b'rosi oiso. Because I created the person as a Tzelem Elokim, and therefore you are killing a Tzelem Elokim. And this is why Onochi Hashem and Lo Sichtzach are on the same level. That Onochi Hashem means the Tzelem Elokim, that there is a Tzelem Elokim, and then you have Lo Sichtzach, that you're not allowed to kill the Tzelem Elokim. So basically, we have the context that we have a body and a shape of Hashem. It has three practical consequences. There is the fact, the reason why we're not allowed to kill a human being is because the Torah says, because Hashem created a human being in the Tzelem Elokim, we are allowed to kill animals, but we're not allowed to kill human beings because he has a Tzelem Elokim. That's the Torah himself says it in Parshas Noach. The second thing is that practical is that we have to do chesed. I have to do chesed because I have a Tzelem Elokim, and I have to do chesed with the other because he has a Tzelem Elokim. And so this creates kind of do chesed with the other, and also the third one is to do chesed with Hashem. So it's clear that the Rambam must have a difficulty, because for him, Hashem, and this is based on the Aristotle's beliefs, is Hashem is completely nisgov. He is above all the human intellect. And Hashem is so much higher than us that we cannot even grasp him, that he is what we call the das, he's the knowledge, he's the tvuna, he's the utmost intellect that exists, and he's also very static. So for the Greek philosophy, they described Hashem as being something completely above all kind of understanding of humanity. The reason why, and before I know that you are going to jump on that, but no. The reason why, and this is something which while I was preparing here this year, I realized that the whole reason why the Rambam had to write the Moira Nevuchim is because when you look in that whole Tanakh, Hashem is always described with attributes that are human attributes, but perfected human attributes. Okeil, Hagodol, Hagibor, Hanoiro, El Elyon. We give him attributes that are descriptive of human beings and that are basically perfect human beings. He is the strongest. He is the biggest. He is the best. He is the toiv and not the ra. He is the. So we give him attributes. The whole Tanakh. And in Athens, Athens, they described God as his infinity. He is almighty. He is above all concepts that we can understand. He is static. All these concepts are much more, descriptive, and it's at much of a high level than even the Torah could have given. The Torah, when you read especially the Tehillim, who is Hashem? Thousands of attributes. Each posture gives another attributes of Hashem. You cannot describe Hashem with one very fine way. And all the descriptions are very primitive in the sense that they are related to human beings. But in Athens, the Greek, what they did is they gave a definition which is really, it's very simple, and it's above all the understanding.
They had several gods.
No, but when they describe the ultimate God, what Aristotle described the ultimate God is really the one that is all these description that the Rambam took as well. And therefore, what he tried to do, the Moira Nevuchim, is really how to reconcile Yerushalayim with Athens. Okay, how can you reconcile the Torah? And therefore, for him, he calls it Yisroy HaTorah is, for him, the Yisroy HaTorah is that God is infinite and that God is no goof. Although that there is nothing at all in the Torah that actually supports that claim from the Rambam. There is. That's so God, so even Hashem. And when you look in the Chazal, Rebbeinu Shalom says he puts on tefillin and he sits and there's a koimer. There's even the Chazal give how big the Rebbeinu Shalom is in thousands of amas. So you have so many Chazal that contradict it. And what he does is he says no, and therefore he puts it in the Yisroy HaTorah, because for him the Greek view is so much more interesting and true that he actually, and we believe it today. Today we know that it is like that. Nobody even has a suffix to say that Hashem is in Demus or Tzelem Chas v'Sholom. We all agree with the Rambam, but we have to understand that the Rambam really is the one that innovated this concept, and he made it a Yisroy HaTorah.
That's the part when the Rambam speaks about Tzelem, and it doesn't say his definition. It says that's the definition. Tzelem doesn't mean the look, the shape. It means a concept.
The concept.
It says the concept is not Hashem. It's just our relationship
towards Hashem. Yeah.
Only defined by the Rabbonim. In the Torah, there was a guy who would say Hashem is Gibor, Noir Star. And say, oh, that's it. Is the new stuff. So we define how you do it, but at no point it means that's what we define Hashem, even from the Gemara itself.
Yeah. Okay, so he does not contradict Chazal, but the Chazal has a lot of contradiction with him. So basically, there's a lot of Chazal and the Torah. The Torah speaks about the Yad Hashem, Etzba Elokim, speaks about the Ayin, he speaks a lot about things which attributes of humans. Now you can say that the Torah was written in a way so that we humans of a lower intellectual level can accept. It's written for the mass.
That's what the Rambam is.
I know.
It's not me.
The Rambam. But it's interesting how the Iker of the Rebbeinu Shalom is not written in the Torah. So in other words, the Iker Rambam went to get it from the Greek in order to put it, and he put it as a Yisroy HaTorah. I'm very extreme now. Okay, I told you, I warned you before. Today I have a very extreme viewpoint and then we can always refine it a little bit more. But that's the viewpoint of the Rambam. You have actually two schools also in physics. In academic physics, you have the two schools. You have those who believe that if I make a mathematical calculation, and I come to a certain conclusion, then the reality is this mathematical conclusion. And that is how a lot of physicists used to believe, that this is the truth. Even if I cannot prove it, but this is the truth because look, mathematically it's correct. And then you have those who say, no, that you have to be, it's called empirical. In other words, I have to be able to prove it, that I should be able to see the result, that you have to be able to make an experiment and prove that this mathematical formula is correct, that I can measure it. Either I can see it, I can hear it, I can feel it in the senses, but not intuition. They are against the concept of intuition because intuition doesn't mean anything. It has to be empirical, measurable.
Just to go even more to your sense, but also that also links two things. First of all, even more in physics, you cannot base yourself not on your vision because everything is wrong. What you see will be wrong in physics. That's what we know from physics. Second of all, that's what you explain is the difference between a theorem and a formula. Theorem doesn't have been proven by fact. Theorem has been that's what we saw with Einstein. It was a theorem of relativity. Check, we can prove it.
Until proven, the difference between what you call a theorem and a theory. A theory, theorem and formula.
I don't know exactly the word. Theorem is something that has
not been proven. Now, for the Rambam, the ideal way to come to his belief is through the theorem. It's intellectually to come to that belief. And that God is pure logic. Hence, all the chushim, all the senses are not necessary because the senses can be a conception, not a conception, that it's fooling you. Yeah, it's illusion. You can be, and therefore for him, the real belief in God has to be purely intellectual. He believes that the whole concept of a novi is somebody that managed to control his body so much that his intellect is completely free of all the subjectivity, and that he can reach a level of understanding that nobody else can understand. And when he reaches that level, automatically there is kind of like a key that it's perfectly matching, and suddenly he gets absorbed in the divine, and he can see things that we can't see. That's the concept of the novi. And sometimes Hashem decides to show him something, to let him see. Sometimes Hashem decides not to let him see. But basically, the novi is somebody that manages to reach that level of intellect, pure intellect, that is very aligned with the intellect of God. And therefore, when he reaches that level, he gets into that resonance, and then he can see things that the others can't see. So for the Rambam, the intellect is what counts, and all the rest, this intuition specifically, and especially what we call today the Chavaya Datit, is to be ignored if possible, because it's a sign of a weakness. So therefore, I believe that the Rambam, who wrote in his Tshuvas that we are not allowed to stand up during the Aseret HaDibros. We all stand up. There is a fear. Oh, I didn't stand up. No, stand up. We all stand up Aseret HaDibros. The Rambam said it's an issur to stand up in Aseret HaDibros. He was clearly in the Tshuva, he does not want you to stand up. There are, for me, 3 reasons. One reason that everybody knows, and then I will give you the 2 other reasons, which I believe are part of what I just explained to you now. First of all, the Aseret HaDibros for the Rambam is a technicality, which I don't think is related to what I just said before. The Rambam believes that there are 613 mitzvahs were given on Sinai. And there are about 14 mitzvahs on the Aseret HaDibros. People talk about 10 commandments here, but there is ba'etzem 14 commandments in the Aseret HaDibros. But the commandments of the Aseret HaDibros for the Rambam has no hierarchical higher level than all the other 613. He says that the 613 are one whole, all of them are as important than the other. And so therefore, a person should not give a priority to the Aseret HaDibros more than they were given to the other mitzvahs. And for that sense, he explains one should not stand up. Because the Chazal even teach us, it's a part of the Chazal, that they used to say Aseret HaDibros during every morning prayers in the Beis HaMikdash, and then Chazal decided to stop that minhag, and we say only Kriyas Shema. They used to say Kriyas Shema and Aseret HaDibros. So when we say the Shachris, used to say Kriyas Shema and Aseret HaDibros, but then because of the minim, says Chazal, the minim are the apikosim, who believe that Aseret HaDibros are the real mitzvahs, because those we heard from Hashem, but all the other mitzvahs we did not hear from Hashem, and therefore they are not so important. And so that's why Chazal said not to say Aseret HaDibros. So this is the basis of the Rambam's rejection of standing up during the Aseret HaDibros. But there are 2 other elements which are very important. And those 2 other elements are the opposite of what the Cuzari, why the Cuzari gives the Aseret HaDibros the core of our Jewish beliefs. First of all, the fact itself that during the Matan Torah, we had an experience of an experience that is unique in the world, where we experience with our senses, which is the hearing and the view and the feeling of an encounter with God. That is something which confirms our belief in Hashem for the Cuzari. We believe in Hashem. Why? Not because somebody told us, also not because of an intellectual capacity that we reached the belief in God, but because we had in our history, we saw God, we heard God, we felt God, we had this Chavaya Datit at that moment of Nesinas at Torah on Sinai. For the Rambam, this is a bedieved. It's a glitch. It's something which should not have happened theoretically. If the people were on the normal level of intellectuality, they would not need to have this all theatrical, dramatical event, because these are signs that we are on a lower level of our beliefs. The belief has to come from a purely intellectual, how do you call it, process and exercise. Now, it would maybe say that the Ases HaDibros, the Nasinas HaTorah, the advantage of it is like a starter in an engine of benzene. Yeah, so it makes the thing turn. First, you need to have this, the ignition. It's like the ignition. But don't say that my engine is the ignition, is the starter. The engine is the benzene, is what turns. Yeah, without the starter, I cannot start. The engine does not go. But if you say that the ikar of the Judaism and the ikar of Emunah is Aseres HaDibros, is the fact that Hashem spoke to us, like the Cuzari hold, that would make the ignition to be the ikar of the engine. And for the Rambam, it's not. The Rambam, it's only an ignition. It's a starters. Because we came from Mitzrayim, we were intellectually not developed. So Hashem had to give us what we call a little bit of a push and to make the engine start to turn. But eventually, the turning itself is something that we have to do. And we should maybe from time to time refer, if we are lacking a bit of emunah, refer to the Ases HaDibros, but it is not the core and the engine of our belief. And so therefore, this whole dramatic and theatrical event is only a bedieved, a glitch in the system, and it's only because we are not at the level that we should have been. That's one thing. And then there's another thing, which is even more fundamentally difficult for the Rambam, is that in the Onochi Hashem, we have already spoke to you, that for me, the Aseres HaDibros that are in the shul there, which are 5 and 5, are not 5 and 5, but they are 2 or 3 and 7 or 8. So in one luach, we have Onochi Hashem lo yir and lo siso, and then in the other luach starts with Kabedes Zochas Yom HaShabbos lekatshoi, Kabedes Avicho lo sichtzach lo sinav lo sane, and then you have lo signov, and then you have lo sachmoid and lo sachmoid, twice lo sachmoid. Anyway, and the reason why I explained you, I'm not going to repeat it here again. The reason why that I have a proof, and it's clear that for me it is like that, is because the Soifrim, they have a parsha psucho between before the Zochas Yom HaShabbos lekatshoi. So between all the dibros, there is a parsha, there's a samach, parsha stumo. So these are all chapters, and so each chapter is a dibur. And therefore, Onochi and lo yir be'etzem are one dibur, because it's one. The Bal Korah read it yesterday as one posuk. He had to breathe had a long breathing exercise, how to read it into one posuk. So therefore, according to the Masoros, it is one dibur. And lo sachmoid, as beis reyecho, lo sachmoid eshes reyecho, are two different diburim, because there's a samach in between them, there's a parsha in between them. But there is a parsha pesucho, a pei. You can see it in your chumash. There is a pei before the Zochas Yom HaShabbos lekatshoi. A parsha pesucho is a new chapter. You start from a new line. It's enter new line, yeah, like in the computer. That's a parsha pesucho. Parsha stumo is a gap. It's a new chapter, but it's still related. It has to start with the same line than the previous chapter. The Parshas Pesucho means that I have to start completely a new line. Yeah, it's a new chapter. And so therefore from here you see that Zochas Yom HaShabbos lekatshoi is in essence the beginning of the second luach. So you have two luchos. One is 2 mitzvahs, Onochi lo yir and lo siso, and the other one is 8 or 7. It starts with Zochoi. Now, the problem I'm sure that the Rambam must have had with the luchos is that in the luchos, the focus of the first luach is about kikel kanoi. I am a jealous God. That I am a God that when you say my name in vain, I get upset. So I require respect. I don't like to be, how do you call it, neglected, but disrespected. And these are attributes that cannot be given to a God that is static, that is above all, that we cannot influence. How can a God like that be jealous and be feeling disrespect? This is for the Rambam a problem. It's not a problem that cannot be resolved, but it is not an ideal God that God would present himself. And so for him to give a standing up for a text that is be'etzem pushing us down to the most primitive beliefs of a God should not be done. For him, don't stand up for a text that was written for the time being, for the people that were at that time that were not capable of understanding something else than at least, follow the Hashem, because otherwise schar v'oinish, you'll be punished if not. This is the whole poiket avoin, that the element of schar v'oinish. That is really the lowest level of belief according to the Rambam. And so to give this Aseres HaDibros the core place, the entry place in the Beis HaMedrash is for the Rambam a very difficult element. Just pour la petite histoire, in Eisenman, I davened in Eisenman last week by the Aufruf of Aaron Waldman. In the Aseres HaDibros, I don't know if you noticed, they have the two luchos, and they say Mamleches Koyanim Goy Kodosh. On the two luchos, they don't put the 10 dibros. They put two luchos, but then they write Mamleches Atem Tioli Mamleches Koyanim Begoy Kodosh. And this is so much. There's so much deep depth in this. I don't know if the what do you call it, the artist knew what he was doing, but for me this is really the symbol that it is exactly what we have to be. The Aseres HaDibros that is written for the Rambam in any case is not the ideal. It is kind of b'diavad. What can we do? We are not perfect, and we are not intellectual capable. So the only thing that will work is tell them that God will be upset and he's jealous, and I don't want to make Hashem upset, and I don't want to make him to disrespect him, and I don't want him to punish me. And so therefore we focused a lot on that element, but that's for the Rambam really basically the lowest level.
According to your view,
not according to me, according to the Rambam, yeah.
We got the Lucas twice. Was written twice the same way, or maybe one was written 5 and 5 and 1 3 and 7.
Oh, I don't know. There you can, because in Yisroy there is a pay, but in Vaischanon there's no pay. Taka, maybe it's a very nice theory that you can say. I don't know. It's only in Yisroy that you see Parshus Psucha between the Loisiso and Zoches Yom HaShabbos Lekatshoy. But in Vaischanon they're all summers. There are no pays, so we don't know how. So maybe this is the difference between the first luach and the first luchos and the second luchos. According to Ibn Ezra, there is no difference between the first and the second. They were exactly the same. Yeah, it's only that Moshe Rabbeinu added things on the second one. The second one was not an exact story. He added because these were the generation that did not experience, they didn't see it. There is changed word, Loisisave. He added also that the Avodim, what, sorry? He spoke about very nice. He spoke Shomer. Instead of Lois Sachmoit, he says Lois is Ave, and instead of no, that's that's both holistic noif. Both holistic noif. But what he did say is that there is in the Shabbos much more harichus that also the avodim, and that because ki avodim yisem b'mitzrayim. So he adds the fact that not only you have to rest, but also you avodim because you were avodim yourself. Yeah, this is the Moshe Rabbeinu added on. Like we already explained, Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to make the mitzvahs more ethical, to more bigger morality. That's the Ibn Ezra. But a lot want to say that it is the first luach is Yisroy and the second luach is Vaischanon. we don't know. It's a lot of, you look in Sharia Aaron, it's called. Sharia Aaron, he brings down all the different opinions that you want. You have so many different opinions. Yerushalmi has different opinion. In any case, the fact that there are 5 and 5 are not in the Gemara, it's in the Zohar and in the Torah. And from there, we have today that it's 5 and 5. But maybe it could be 2 and 8, 3 and 7. We don't know.
The theory is just that Anoichi and Siftak is on the same level.
Yeah. So the way that we have, the masseurs that we have, and the artists that are doing it by us, is makes a lot of sense as well. But what doesn't make sense, but is a how do you call it, aesthetical, because it makes that the first luach was written with a lot of text. It's like full text, and the second one was only it's mamish, very little text. There's no balance in the number of words. But the way that I explain it, if the Zuchos Yom HaShabbos is first, then it's a very well balanced luchos. Now, it's not a proof that it is like that, but this is questions that people ask me. So they say that the Chassidish answer is that the font was taka bigger, and therefore Lo Sichtzach was written in a big font to tell us. In Yiddish they say in Kiddush Levuna oisius. I don't know if you heard this expression. It's called in Kiddush Levuna because they used to put outside of the shul and in the chotzer, they used to put a big Kiddush Levuna because people went out, and then they had it on and it was written in big because it was dark, and so the Kiddush Levuna oisius. This is a font, the bigger font. So this is, according to me, the reason why the Rambam kind of did not put Seis HaDibros, and he didn't want us to stand up. It's not only the technical reason of the mitzvahs, but for me, it's also the whole tararam around it, the whole dramatic and theatrical event that happened with it. It's for him not an ideal, and also the text itself creates a problem for him because he wants to see a God that is purely intellectual. There is no emotions. It's only klape us. It's only the way that we have to perceive him, but it's not something that he is. And in the Seis HaDibros, we see a God which for him is really not what he is, but more what we perceive. And so
apparently I've only heard the first one.
Yeah, but anyway, in the first,
we asked Moshe to say it because it was too much for us.
But the Kel Kano is in the first one, unless you want to say Onoichi is only the first one. I don't know. It's
according to the Rambam.
Actually, two. We heard two. We said two. Yeah.
Not according to the Rambam.
No.
To the Unze, you heard nothing. Just a sound.
Just a sound. Yeah. That's So what is the Cuzari then? So the Cuzari is much more closer. That's why I think that the Moira Nevuchim is not relevant today anymore, because the whole Moira Nevuchim tries to fit the Aristotelian view of God and the Torah, and this is not the question anymore in today's world. So according to some, the Cuzari is much more closer to our world because it's about the difference between our intellect and our Chavaya Datit. And this is where the Cuzari focuses a lot. If you want, and I will still give shiurim on the Cuzari as we said last week. But the Cuzari starts, and I will repeat this a lot, with something which is very interesting. The Cuzari starts with a dream of a king, where the king tells him, "Your kavonos are good, but your maisim are not good." Now, that concept on itself has unbelievable richness in it. First of all, the belief that the dream has a value. For the Rambam would have told him, you should sleep less, then you'll dream less. Okay, if you have a problem with your dream, then sleep less. It's a right that you sleep too much.
It's 3 times the same.
Whatever, it doesn't make a difference. Rambam would say even 5 times, sleep less and you won't have. Dreams are not intellectually valid, first of all. And also the king was not at the level of Nevuah that he would receive, according to Rambam, in order to receive messages from God, you have to be the highest level. The second of all is, and that's very interesting, so those who believe in a dream, they believe in what we call the Chavaya Datit, let's call it that way. And so when you believe in Chavaya Datit, you would think that then it is the Chavaya Datit that is the Ikar. It is the feeling that is the Ikar. It's like Chasidus. It is the feeling, the Lev that is the Ikar. And then what does this Chavaya Datit tell him? Your kavonos are good, but your maisim are not. So this is a contradiction. Minei ubei. It's a contradiction. Because on the one hand, you believe in the dream, and therefore you believe in kind of a Chavaya Datit. And on the other hand, what does he say? That your kavonos, your heart is a good place, but your maisim are not in a good place. Your deeds are not in a good place. The deeds is the lowest level for a person that believes in Chavaya Datit. The deeds are not so important because the ikar is the experience and not so much the deeds. And so you have here a very interesting concept, and you will see in the Cuzari that the Melech struggles with that. So when he goes to the philosopher who tells him the intellectual, then he says, yeah, but I had a dream. So he believes I had a dream, and he believes in his dream. And when he goes to the Muslim or the Christians, then he says, yeah, but this is intellectually not acceptable. And so therefore, by the Jew, he came the Chover, and there with him he managed to convince him, and this is part of a next year how and what is this basis. But for the Cuzari, this experience of the Matan Torah is the spitz of our experience and in our beliefs. He says the only reason that we believe in Judaism is because we have heard it himself, and it's not based on a person that comes and says that I had a dream, that God spoke to me, and he gave me this book, and this is the book that you have to follow. But we, 2 million people, were there, we heard God himself. And therefore, he is very much into the factual that we've seen it, and not because we came to that conclusion, but because we've seen it. And this is really the fundamental difference between the Cuzari and the Rambam. That we, Klal Yisrael.
No, okay, speaking, we're not there. No, but that's already Shuba, whatever. But some will say part of the body, but
okay. That's an argument, intellectual argument against that Cuzari.
But you say that we is the people or is the
our ancestors. Our ancestors.
I have an answer for your question, but it's like 5 minutes, so maybe after the share.
After the share, okay. No, I want to hear it, and it will be recorded.
It's very important because this is the thing in Gates that
I'll turn it.
I could jump in maybe.
Yeah, go ahead.
So when I was in Gateshead, I was done with my chavus, and one day I noticed my chavus looked a bit down, a bit depressed. So I asked him, is everything okay? He says, no, I've been thinking. I said, what are you thinking? He says, we sit here every day. In the morning we prepare the shir. Then we have the shir. We have to move it. In the afternoon we have to say the afternoon. In the evening. And how do we know that we're in the right religion? Maybe the Muslims are right. Maybe the Catholics. It's not because I was born in a Jewish family.
Yeah.
So I told him, Meir, I have the same questions, but you cannot ask it in yeshiva. We're going to be kicked out. So we learned that the Rav Mordechai Miller was the director of the SEM, of the girls' SEM. He used to give a kind of clandestine shir for Buchen every second week on Wednesday evening somewhere in Gateshead. And we used to go, we were 7, 8 people, and we were very thirsty. Now, to say who was Rav Mordechai Miller, he grew up in London. His parents were not specifically very religious, but their neighbor was the Mirtav Milio, Rav Dessler. So they wanted their son to have some Yiddishkeit, so they asked Rav Dessler to learn with their son. He was very talented, Rav Mordechai Miller. He became a barrister afterwards, but Rav Dessler saw what material he had, and he convinced him to drop this being a lawyer and to come to Gateshead, and we know what happened there. He became the director of the center. So we went over to him after the shiur, and we said, we have some questions. He said, no problem, I invite you to my house. So we came to his house, and we put all the questions on the table. My chavrusa was very short. Maybe they were hypnotized. And Rabbi Miller, well, we had many questions that he gave us, and he told us one thing, but then he said, That's for me has become the main thing.
Yeah.
It's perek chov.
Yeah.
Everybody was there and everybody saw. By the way, it says kolom roim esakolos. Rav Lieberman has a very nice word on that. Maybe you should say shoymim esakolos roim esalapidim. Elamai. Rav Lieberman says there are things that you can see physically. You can see this is a table. And there are things that you hear. You hear there is a God, but you don't see him. You hear him. But then they were such a madrage that they saw what they heard. So he said the fact that everybody was there. Imagine that somebody would come next week and say, how was your trip to Paris last week? So, what trip to Paris? Yeah, you were there with your father in Paris. So I never went to Paris. You would reject it right away. The fact that it went from father to son, it continues, and today we are here and we are busy with this religion. And this is so now we jump a few years later. I went to study in Ghent philology, and there was the most famous professor there that everybody attended his lesson. He was Professor Willem Prevenier, geschiedkundige kritiek. I didn't even know that this existed. This is historians. They sit down and they try to find out history. For example, they find a letter of Louis XIV. He writes to the King of England, sorry, I couldn't attend your coronation because there was a fire in Paris. How do we know that there was really a fire in Paris? Maybe he just used it as an excuse. These people are busy with this kind of stuff. He gave extraordinary lectures. Everybody came from different things. The doors of the auditorium were open. People were standing outside. And then there was the exam. And the exam, he told us, you will get the questions and you will answer. Then you will come to me with the answers of your questions. And then in order to get eventually extra points, you will pick a card. So there are going to be cards on the table with questions. You will pick one, and this will give you the possibility or not to have some more points. I come to him, I give him my exam, he reads it, says, looks very good, pick a card. Take a card, read out the question. I read out, I said, if there is a legend, how do historians attribute some value to this legend? He tells me, Meneer Salomon, you choose the most difficult question. We never discussed this during the lesson. So what is your answer? So I tell him, if it's based on something that some people said that they heard that somebody was there, we don't attribute any value to it. But if it's linked to the people themselves, he said, I'm going to give you all the points. He gave me, then he had to correct it. He gave me 18, 20 for the exam. End of the story.
So he agreed that this is an argument.
I could have maybe converted him to Judaism.
Very nice story. Very, very nice story. And I shared the story because you went to and you went to this. You heard this logic, and then you could apply it in your exam.
Every time when it comes to Yisroy, I was a bit jealous of my friend here that he had this idea. It's
a beautiful story.
What you said about the recent, that's a real experiment that happened with Nelson Mandela. They invented, I forget the name of the experiment. That's the proof that they went to I think it was in South Africa. That you get a huge audience, 100 of people. And one of the people was sending a wrong fact that it never happened. I don't remember. Nelson Mandela was a big fan of Netanyahu. And it started like this, and people were saying no. And there was also people saying, what? We saw it. And after like a certain amount of time, all of them were convinced that it was the case.
Yeah, that's a problem. But in any case, it's not bulletproof because God gives us still how do you say bechira in our munah also, but it's a very, very strong sense of a proof that there was something. So what I said is that for the Rambam everything is in the intellect, and for the Cuzari there is this extra of what we call in English, je ne sais quoi. That there is something which is this chavaya datit, that actually we feel when we go to the Koisel, when we go to a Rebbe's Tish, and there is suddenly a feeling that we cannot describe, that is not physical, but it is this extra inner side, intuition, whatever you want to call it, that we cannot explain it. And for the Cuzari, this is a real feeling. And for the Rambam, it is a primitive, imaginational, whatever it is. The Rambam would not give it an importance, but for the Cuzari, it does. And that's why I'm saying, and that's why they also say the Rambam is not really, the Moreh Nevuchim is not for our generation, because this is not the relevance of our...
Because Moreh Nevuchim speaks only about Emunah.
Emunah, yeah.
The Rambam still agrees that you need to perform the 613 mitzvahs in order to believe. So if you're ADHD, you could still believe in the Rambam because you perform.
You perform. Yeah, but it's a difficult one, because for the Rambam, that's why for the Rambam, and that's also something very clear, there is no, we have a belief, because we are from the Cuzari, we are Talmidim from the Cuzari. The Judaism of today is a Cuzari Judaism, let's put it very clear, and not the Rambam. We have learned in school there are Chukim and there are Mishpotim. Chukim are mitzvahs that, Mishpotim are logical mitzvahs, and Chukim are the non-logical mitzvahs. And so the non-logical mitzvahs we have to keep. Why? Because these are mitzvahs that we can't understand anyway. They are beyond. This is typically the Cuzari. There are mystical mitzvahs that we cannot understand, but they are good for us. Hashem, we do something which we cannot understand, and we will never understand, because these are chukim by definition. And there is this concept. For the Rambam, it does not exist. There is no this. Even the chukim, even the things we don't understand, is because we don't understand. But they have a reason, and the reason is very logic. And if we don't understand, then it's our problem. But it's not. The mitzvahs have to be logic. The word
we cannot grasp it.
No, we can grasp it, but we have not grasped it yet. But we can grasp it. It's not in our limitation. It is possible to understand. So in other words, maybe the chukim, difference between the chok and the mishpot is that, like the Netziv says, the chukim are the midrash haTorah nidreshes, and the mishpotim are the results of the midrash haTorah nidreshes. So it's more the Netziv explains the chukim differently. This is as a child, we always learned the chukim are the non-logical mitzvahs and the mishpotim. And a lot of the Rishonim also go into that direction. For the Rambam, it's clear that he does not have that. He tries to explain all the mitzvahs, and he says that all the mitzvahs have a reason, and the reason is on this world, because the reason will give you, it will clean, it will help you in intellectually grow. These mitzvahs, they are helping you to grow intellectually. And so for him, theoretically, if you can reach this intellectual level even without the mitzvahs, he would not have arguments to tell you that you have to follow the Torah mitzvahs. He's lacking that element. So there is a critique on that part, and I know from Rambamistim, there is a famous Rambamist now. It's becoming very famous on YouTube. I forgot his first name, but his name is Tzaddik. Shalom Tzaddik. You heard about him? He's a Teimani. I think he's a Teimani. That's why he's a very big Rambamist, and he's very much goes into this concept of rationality, and he believes that we should get back to. He calls us conservatives, Shamranim. He calls us conservatives, but actually he believes that the Rambam's viewpoint is the best viewpoint and the real viewpoint. He's not against us, because he says that we apparently we need it, otherwise we would not keep any Torah mitzvahs. But he says that the ideal is like the Rambam, is really to believe in only. He believes that the Zohar is Avodah Zorah, okay? That the 10 spheros and all the rest. So he has a very strong viewpoints, but he's a Chumer. He's not. He says it's a bit like we will see the Cuzari is like the Egel. It's a bit of an Avodah Zorah that apparently the people need, and in order to be able to understand, it's kind of.
Why did we burn the
First, we didn't never burned it. We put it in the cupboard on the top shelf behind other Sforim. That's what we do with the Moreh Nevuchim. But we don't burn it. No. No, the only some part, you're right, some part of the Ilchos Deus were burned, were put in Cherem in Provence, in France. The French started a war against the Rambam by Rab Minohor, I forgot, Rab Shloime Minohor, in Provence, and he managed to convince, and then he went even when the Chachmei Provence still did not want to be Machrim the Rambam, he went apparently to the Christians, to tell them that there is a Jew which is an Apikoirus, and we have to be Machrim him. And unfortunately, they say that the Paris burning of the Talmud, of the Gemaras, was a result of that, and he made tshuva and he regretted his act. It was a big fight in that. So basically, the Chavaya Datit is something that the Cuzari not only promotes, but it's really it's part of our belief system, and it's something that is real. And therefore, he says that where the Cuzari is more a book that explains the struggle between our intellect, where the intellect says religion is the opium of the nation, is try to control us and try to keep a good society so that we should not kill each other, and there should be a schar v'oinish, and all these intellectual which we hear, but also how do you deal with the intuition, which is this feeling that there is something more that we cannot explain. And this two together, it's the whole book of the Cuzari. The Rambam is more busy with the intellectual understanding of the Torah versus what existed at the time of Aristo, and how can you combine both. The idea itself that the Rambam was against the Kabbalah is because the word itself says it. Kabbalah means that we have received it and we have not thought about it. It's not Kabbalah means it's an axioma. This is what it is. 10 spheroids, Chesed, Rachmim, the whole thing. And for the Rambam, this is not to be accepted. You have to come to it with your own intellectual capacity. And this is what he writes, and I agree with him, but it's really not, it's strong what I'm going to say. But according to the Rambam, when the Torah says Tzaddik and Rosha, you should say Chochem and Tipish. Okay? I don't know if I'm clear. But it's only a Chochem that will reach Gan Eden and Olam Habo, and not a Tipish. And that's very, very strong and hard to understand and to be rejected.
You have idiots that are Chacham.
Oh, whatever. So that's what I'm saying. It
can be a
I know personally geniuses that they miss the point.
Yeah.
And
exactly. That's what I was thinking also. At least it was, but for him it is the and this I understand why he says it, that instead of Tzaddik v'Rosha, you should read it Chochem and Tipish. But it's right. It's not Stam a Chochem. It's a Chochem that comes to the right understanding, which is therefore a Tzaddik. But for him, a Tzaddik is somebody that managed to think and to come to the emes, the intellectually. It's very difficult, and that's why it was rejected a lot, because Rav Cherki rejects a lot the Cuzari, and because he says that the Cuzari believes be'etzem in Chavaya Datit, and this Tefillah is a Chavaya Datit. It means, in other words, that not everybody has a Chavaya Datit. He believes that some people are born rationalist, and they don't have this Chavaya Datit. And so how can they daven? If davening is an what? Yeah, but this Chavaya... Yeah. But apparently it doesn't come out. It does not come out at some people. Some people, I have a friend of mine that came over to me, and he says, basically what he came to say is to say that you are suffering because you don't have a Chavaya Datit, and that it must be that you have a problem, a trauma, that blocks this Chavaya Datit to come out, because everything by me is rational, and that I miss it when I shock lulav. I shock lulav because that's what Hashem told me, and that's what I have to do. And he says that it's a shame because you could feel the Chavaya Datit. So he believes that every person, what you say, every person has a Chavaya Datit, but that due to education, experiences, traumas, whatever it is, it gets blocked. And then it's only the intellect that comes out. Other people are opposite. By Hasidim, you see that, there is the opposite. They have no intellectual understanding, but they only have the Chavaya Datit. So basically, this is kind of finding a right balance. Yeah, okay.
Was the physical, whether you understand or whether you don't understand.
Yeah, that is the... This is what we said, and this is what the Cuzari also wants to promote, and not like the Rambam, but the Ma'aseh Mad'ikah. The Ma'aseh Mad'ikah. And that's one of the things which the Rambam has difficulty, because the Ma'aseh are only a means to achieve intellectual purity. Whatever, you will find, that's what I said, the Rambam, somebody said, my son told me, the Rambam has a viewpoint, that's what the Rambam has a viewpoint, and then Chazal say opposite, and the Posuk says opposite, the Novi says something opposite, doesn't care. He continues with his viewpoint. And then if you have a question, that's what the Rambam would say. Oh, you're right. I can't explain that but this is the reality, because he really believed that the intellect is what is the driving force, and it's what's going to keep us in Olam Habo, in the Nitzrius. It is purely through our intellect.
That's against what actually the Rambam is writing. He brings I have two stories from his writings, clearly mentioning it. He said, every Averis research you don't do, you're going to pay for it. And not, we are intellectual people, you are at that level. No, you have to do it physically. So that contradicts what you are saying.
No, because it's one of the Yud Gim Likrim. It doesn't contradict. Yeah, but you're right.
Do it, so it's not you are above.
But in the Moira Nevuchim, he positions the mitzvahs only as a mean to achieve intellectual purity.
It's not, the mitzvah by itself, you have to go higher, but the mitzvah by itself, it's a requirement that you have to practice. It's not something you can, but that's clearly from him. Second of all,
he also brings down that the Rambam has contradictions in his own understanding.
So also the story of the Gemara with Rabbi Akiva, when he's in Rome, he's saying when they give him a non-kosher animal to eat and he's putting a finger, actually he's eating the second one. He could have eaten, said no, even in that case, he will have to pay the Aveiro. So you see how far it goes.
Yeah.
Just in practicality of the mitzvah, not only in the intellectual part.
But this he cannot explain. He cannot explain that. So the Rambam has a difficulty on how to explain this type of... Of course, it's one of the Yud Gim Likrim is a schar b'oinish. So there's no doubt about it. The Rambam would never disagree. But in his intellectual philosophy, it cannot explain. It cannot be explained.
Okay, we can discuss that.
It cannot be explained. In any case, so very, very short, we described the Sason Oisi that to make God, how do you make God is by making human beings, by the shape of human, statue of human beings. We said that this goes against the Rambam's own opinion, but he has no choice and he has to add it in the mitzvahs. We said that there are two schools. You have those who are more empirical, that you have to see it, and you have those who say, no, intellectually, if it's mathematically correct, then it's good enough, and what you call a theorem. And then the Rambam is of the first school, and the Cuzari is of the second school. And the Rambam rejects Asayas Adibris. He rejects, he downplays it in any case, is because, first of all, there's no hierarchy in the mitzvahs. And then the second point is because the whole theater around that is a b'diavad. We have to come to the same conclusion by intellectually and not by seeing. Seeing is any case is for him a lower level of reality. It is intellect that is the real. The real is in the mind and not in the touch. Okay, this is a famous Greek philosophical question: is this real or not real, or is it just a perception of real? Because I can see it, but so this is the existentialism, and I don't know the new ways of philosophy, and also because God represented himself as a jealous God and a God that requires respect, etc., which is for him not the ideal God. The ideal God is the Elokei Niskov, the Elokei the Ein Sof, the static God, and not the dynamic God. And here we have a God that presents himself as a dynamic God that becomes upset and he's happy and he gives reward and he gives on. There's the whole element that makes God more of a human personality, and that on itself was a critique of the Rambam had on himself that we are presenting God as human traits, while in Greece, in Athens, they present God with concepts that are above our understanding. Ein Sofiyut, in the how do you call it, the static God, the God that is above all understanding, which makes much more sense for the Rambam. And so he has this critique, this tension, the metach between what he sees in the Tanakh and in Chazal and what the Greek philosophy has come to. And he takes the Greek philosophy and he adds it on in his Yisroy Torah, and he adds it also in the Yud Gimel Ikrim Shatorah Lidreshes Poem. Yud Gimel Ikrim von Emunas HaTorah. And then we have the Cuzari that doesn't speak about that part, but more speaks about the metach that there is between our intellect and our hearts. And the heart says that there is God, and there is a feeling of God, there is something godly. Even the Chilonim, 60 or 70% of the Chilonim do have moments when they feel that there is something and they have to oppress it. And he says that a lot of the Datiim have 60% of the Datiim has sometimes intellectually have questions about their beliefs. And he says that this is always going to be like that. It's always going to be those who believe that they have sometimes intellectual doubts, and those who don't believe, they don't want to believe, they have to suppress their feelings because their feelings tells them there is something more to life, there's something more, they feel something that they cannot describe. This je ne sais quoi that we sometimes feel, this chavaya datit, and this is what the Cuzari wants to give it an enormous place, where the Rambam wants to simply reject it as something which is primitive and not from an intellectual, highly intellectual developed nation. Sure, this was, as I told you, a heavy shiur, a bit of thank you for your input. It was really interesting. It's the basis maybe from the next shiurim that will try to develop a little bit more the Moir Nevuchim versus the Cuzari, but I would prefer to go into the Cuzari, because the Moir Nevuchim for me is an extreme which is too extreme, and it's too far from maybe from my personal ideal. Okay, c'est du passé. That's what they say. The Cuzari is extremely relevant today. Has never been as relevant today as it has been as now. So maybe it's kedai to continue with the Cuzari rather than with the Rambam. But it's always good to learn both, because then you can compare. It's always good to have a comparative.
How come Chabad is very poor Rambam?
The Rambam only in the Mishnah Torah, but not in the Moir Nevuchim. They never learn Moir Nevuchim. I told you, by most Charedim, the Moir Nevuchim is hidden. It's a sefer that is hidden. Parce que nicht lernen, the Moir Nevuchim. Nobody learns the Moir Nevuchim.
Moi, je crois que le mariage entre Lubavitch et le Rambam,
ouais. C'est Meshiachisme, peut-être.
Non. Le Rambam, c'est-à-dire quand tu ne peux pas combattre quelqu'un, tu vas le convertir. Et ça fait 800 ans qu'on est avec ce Rambam. Je suppose que pendant 800 ans, il y a eu des gens qui ont essayé d'expliquer comment ça a été une question. Bien Lubavitch et d'autres. On dit, il n'y a pas de problème, on le convertit. Donc, tu rentres chez Lubavitch, ils ont fait de lui un Lubavitch.
Ouais. Je suis d'accord. Je crois que tu as vraiment raison. Tu as vraiment raison. Ils prennent le Rambam et le cachent en disant on doit apprendre chaque jour le Rambam. Le Rambam, voilà. C'est la Torah, ça c'est toute la Torah, c'est là qu'ils veulent. Dans leur réclame, quand ils font maintenant, ils disent Das kol la Torah kul. Quand tu apprends le Rambam, tu connais toute la Torah kul. Ouais. C'est vraiment ils ont.
J'explique le Rambam, j'explique le reste.
Ouais. Shkoyer, maybe we don't attack the goal, Shneim Meir of Yomeinu Omein.